Good evening. Welcome, everyone, to our February board meeting. And as always, we'd like to begin our time together with a prayer. Ms. Roletta, would you please lead us?
Certainly. Please stand and join me in prayer. Dear God, recently I've been thinking about some of the qualities we as trustees should demonstrate. Guide us in showing respect, kindness, thoughtfulness, and sagacity. May we all demonstrate devotion, patience, tenacity, intelligence, leadership, and love for children. God, as good trustees, we should also be good listeners, planners, proactive, prudent, data-driven, and humble. All positive characteristics. On the other hand, God, deliver us from being the opposite of all of these fine qualities. Never divisive, impatient, or unresponsive. Deliver us from arrogance, abusiveness, and narcissism. We ask these things for the children of Greenville County Schools. Amen.
Amen. As we remain standing, and as a reminder of the outstanding students we serve, I'd like to invite one of our students to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Tonight we've invited Ty Chambers from Hillcrest Middle School to lead the pledge. Hello, Ty. Ty serves as Student Council President and was voted most likely to succeed by his 8th grade peers. He's also a member of the Hillcrest High School track and field team. Ty is known for his strong work ethic, and he serves as a mentor to many of his fellow students. Would you please lead us?
I will. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank Vice Chairman Bush and Expressions Unlimited for generously donating these beautiful flowers to inspire us to do our best work. Thank you so much, Ms. Bush. The next item on our agenda is the adoption of the consent calendar. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. And the motion carries. Dr. Royster, would you like to take this opportunity to introduce the new employees on the consent calendar?
Thank you, Dr. O'Connor. Good evening. Be glad to do so. We'll start with what I believe will be a familiar face to you, and that is the new principal of Augusta Circle Elementary School, Mimi Melahess. Mimi? Currently serves Ellen Woodside Elementary as its principal, and I know as much as Augusta Circle welcomes you to their family, Ellen Woodside will miss you at theirs, but we congratulate you on this new opportunity. Look forward to your leadership there. You have some family with you.
I do. This is my son James, and James is a 7th grader at Beck, and this is my husband Mike.
I'm glad to have you all here tonight. Congratulations. Corey Collington, Corey, if you'd stand, currently serving as the assistant principal at Carolina High School, but we welcome him tonight as the newly appointed principal of Berlin Middle School. Corey, congratulations. Glad to have you not only in that role, but have you with us here tonight. Do you have some family members with you?
Yes, sir. This is my wife, Daniela, and my daughter, Kylie, my daughter, Carrington, my mother-in-law, Debbie, and my nephew, Brayden.
Welcome to each of you. The next appointment, the newly appointed principal of Blue Ridge Middle School, coming to us from Lugoff Elgin Middle School in Kershaw County, Karen Bullard. Congratulations. We look forward to having your leadership there at Blue Ridge. Do you have some individuals with you tonight?
Yes, I have my husband Clay.
And welcome to you as well. Welcome to Greenville County Schools. Our next individual, Jeremy Smith, is not with us tonight, and you all get an opportunity to meet him later. He is coming to us as a very experienced principal from Mattoon Middle School in Mattoon, Illinois, and within the last couple of years has been the Illinois State Middle School Principal of the Year. So we look forward to bringing him and introducing him at a later date when we can work out him being here. And his introduction to the faculty, I believe, was handled the interactive TV, so they got the opportunity to meet him that way. Next, Stephanie Reese. There's Stephanie. I think she will certainly be familiar to many of the board members. Stephanie served us very capably as a principal at Allen Woodside prior to Mimi Melahez, and she has been in Columbia County, Georgia for the last several years, serving as principal very successfully at 2 different schools, and we're very pleased to welcome her back to Greenville County and to be the new principal at Fountain Inn Elementary School. Stephanie, welcome back. You have folks with you.
Sarah, my daughter Rachel, my son-in-law Bradley, and my husband John.
And welcome back to all of you as well. And our final appointment to be introduced is Jennifer Couch. Jennifer currently serves as the assistant principal at Woodmont Middle School, and she is moving into the role of principal at Woodmont Middle School, and we certainly congratulate her on that new responsibility, and we're excited to have her there. Jennifer, do you have anyone with you?
Yes, sir. I wanted to honor the people who first taught me about love and leadership. So tonight I brought my parents, Neil and Diane Mims, and 2 of my siblings, Michael and Amy Mims.
We're very pleased that you all could be with us as well. Congratulations to each of you. We're glad to welcome all of you into your new roles, and it's one of the great parts of the job to be able to introduce new principals, and particularly in your case, Jennifer, someone coming into their first principalship. But we're glad to have you all with us tonight and look forward to your leadership in those new roles. Congratulations.
Thank you very much, Dr. Royster, and our warm welcome to each of you. The next item on our agenda is 3.01, the appearance of visitors. Our secretary, Ms. LaVentus Wells, do you have anyone from the audience that you may want to bring our attention to tonight?
You know, of course, there's Dr. Ray, Keith Ray. He once sat right where you did, and now he's sitting out there. So be careful, he could run again. So. But with that being said, we have students from Wade Hampton, we have students from Furman University and USC Upstate, as well as Greenville Tech. So we welcome all of you and all of those that are here tonight to participate and see what we do as your board trustees, as we represent all of the people of Greenville County and the children.
Thank you very much for that. And if you would you please introduce the rules of engagement before we invite our guest speakers up?
I'll be glad to. Thank you. Welcome to those who have signed up to speak tonight before the Board of Trustees. And thank you for your interest in Greenville County Schools. Before we begin, let me remind everyone of the following procedures. As each speaker's name is called, he or she should proceed to the podium at the end of the board dais where there is a microphone and a light system. Each speaker has up to 3 minutes to speak to the board. The light system will be green for the first 2 minutes and will turn yellow when 1 minute remains on the speaker's allotted time. In keeping with board policy KCA, abusive language or personal attacks aimed at students or staff members will not be permitted. All speakers are expected to behave in an orderly and respectful manner. The board will not engage in discussion with the speaker or respond to comments. The superintendent will designate a member of the staff to respond to each speaker in appropriate time and timely manner. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. And I would just ask, if I mispronounce your name, would you please correct the name for the record when you get to the microphone? Our first guest is Sarai Batista.
First of all, I want to thank you for everything that you do. My name is Sarai Batista, and I am a DACA recipient. And at this time, I would like everybody that is here to support Dreamers to raise their hand. Thank you. I arrived in Easley, South Carolina in the February of 2002. Tonight, I want to very humbly thank you for voting on the resolution to support Dreamers in South Carolina tonight. I want to thank you for continuing the work of making education available to all minors regardless of immigration status. When I was a little girl in a poor town in Mexico, teachers were always the wisest, best dressed, and the most respectable people in my eyes. And here in this blessed country in which I find myself to be in, they continue to hold that place in my heart. I see educators and advocates for education continuing to lead the way into making their communities better. I pray that other school systems follow your example. As a DACA recipient, my biggest concern is creating a way to give back to the community that I love. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, Bettina Bryant.
So before Bettina speaks, I just want to introduce myself. I'm Tracy Fan. You guys know me, organizer of Freedom Fighters Upstate South Carolina. I'm accompanied here by parents and people in the community who are concerned about our students' safety. And I want to tell you all that we appreciate the transparency of Greenville County Schools. I've always said this. You guys have always upheld your word to us to be consistent and committed to being transparent with us. And so if you guys could show that same thing to these parents, we truly appreciate it.
Hi, my name is Bettina Bryant. I have one child in high school, and I have two more children in middle school. My concern as a parent is the safety of our children. How can we get gun violence under control? What do we have to wait for something to happen to one of our schools for an action to be taken place? There are multiple times where I have noticed that there are children who anybody can enter the school at any given time. Children are letting parents in the school, children are letting other children in the school, and our children's safety is at risk. And as a parent, I'm concerned with the tragedies that we've had over the world for the past, I don't know, year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. We've had multiple shootings in different areas. I would like for something to happen and have something in place for our children, for them to be safe. If our taxes need to be raised, then let's do that. However we can get this done, I would like for my children to be safe. I would like for anyone's children to be safe. Our children go to school to get an education, not to be killed, not to be harassed, not to be bullied, not to be picked on. It's just too much for our children. How can we get this done? What can we do? We don't want it to happen to our children in our school. It's so close to home right now. How can we have protection for our children in a moderate way, or it not being a question of it doesn't look presentable for the school, or it doesn't sound like it's something that we should do? As a parent, for my children and anybody else's children, grandchildren, great-grands, whoever, how can we protect our children?
Thank you, Ms. Bryant. Next is Ruth Patten Nita.
Good afternoon. My name is Ruth Patton. I would like to give honor to God first, and then I would like to thank you all for giving me this opportunity to be able to talk. I have a daughter. My name is Ruth Anita Patton. I have a daughter. Excuse me. She's 5th grade, going to the middle school. I am very concerned about my kids, my child. I'm concerned about all the other kids. You know, I see on the news about the little child, Jacob Hall, you know, the other schools. A parent don't want to take that child to school. you know, and then they don't come back home. It's some kind of way we need to make our kids safer. Even if we have to do metal detectors, if we have to do bake sales, whatever it takes, raising taxes, whatever it takes, I'm on board. No price is enough for my child's life or any other child in schools. Our kids need to be safe. In order for them to be able to think and do their work, they have to have a clear mind and not worry about is they going to make it home to their parents. You know, I ride by the schools just to see is my child okay. I'll make excuses just to go to the schools to see if my child is fine. You know, it is not just my kid, it's all the kids. I love all the kids, and I want them to be safe. You know, I just ask y'all to just think about the metal detectors. Whatever y'all have to do, let's try to get metal detectors in the schools, and it'll make us feel a little better and our kids safer. And I thank you all so much.
Thank you for being here. Next, we have Keith Ray.
Hello, friends. It's so good to see you tonight. It's like coming home in a little bit. I'm here tonight to offer my appreciation and support for the resolution that you're going to be voting on tonight related to DACA students. When I was on this board, I remember the O.B. Lyles, who used to be the Director of Communications, said to me one day, Keith, if you go out and respond to that story, you're going to make that story live on for 3 or 4 or 5 days. If you shut up, it'll go away tomorrow. His point was that we have to decide what we put ourselves out there for. We can't put ourselves out there for everything. But when it comes to this resolution that's before you tonight, it's worth putting yourself out there for these students. We are spending money in our curriculum and in our instruction at the at Greenville County Schools, training up students to be able to get jobs when they leave the school system. But because of a law that was passed in 2008 by the State Assembly, they are not able to get their licenses that they need for welding, for cosmetology, for other programs. It's the right thing to do to take a stand and put our necks out there for our students. This board has always done that. One of my great prides of being on this board is I felt like even when we disagreed, even when we went round and round about things, our hearts were for the students. So please accept my thanks for even taking this up, and accept my thanks even more for passing it. Ms. Grayson, thank you for your work in the Advocacy Committee. Let's stand up for our DACA students. Let's help them be treated with the fairness and equity they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is James Campbell.
Hello, good evening. I'm James Campbell. I'm a Spanish teacher at Carolina High School in Greenville. And from a teacher's perspective, I'd like to thank you for bringing the resolution on these DACA students up. These students have a legal residence in the state of South Carolina, but face challenges they don't need to face. And this affects our classrooms too. This affects how we communicate with, let me give you an example. I have a 9th grader this year who is struggling to find a purpose in being in school, like many 9th graders, but she just saw her sister graduate last spring, and as a DACA student has nowhere to go for school unless she wants to pay out-of-state tuition for Greenville Tech, where she should be going for free given her GPA. So it does affect the middle schoolers, the younger siblings. They do see this, and they can turn around what they're doing in their algebra class. This could affect what they're doing in their math class, in their English class. So it does. I do see this. I do see it with students that I try to counsel. Like, there's going to be something for you. And as a teacher, we hope for something for them, and we value this education, and then at the same time, we get kind of, I don't want to say punished, but for not graduating students that have no hope. Like, we're taking away their hope, and we take away their opportunity for an occupational license for something that they've earned in their coursework at a high school or at a local career center or at a tech school. So I appreciate you guys raising this proposal and this resolution. I know there's a lot of things going on federally that we can't control necessarily, but I hope that we can, do the right thing when it comes to the students and their state certifications, and for students that live here legally and are going to be a servant to our communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Next, we have Henry Leer.
All right. I just want to start off by thanking you for all that you do, specifically pertaining to this resolution on DACA. I think it's fantastic. But I'm here tonight to ask for something rather specific, and that's to ask the school board's advocacy committee, which is chaired by Ms. Grayson, to support legislation that would protect students. And one of these bills is H4975, which would ban assault weapons in high-capacity magazines in the state of South Carolina. Now, Mr. Saylor said during the advocacy committee meeting that this was something that's not in our wheelhouse, and I have to respectfully disagree, because I think that any measure that protects student safety and ensures that my classmates feel safe when they are learning is something that this board ought to pursue. I don't think that arming teachers and pursuing incremental change is the answer, and it certainly will not make me and my peers feel safer. In fact, a number of them signed on to this specific demand, asking that this board take some type of action. My peers don't feel safe in school, and I don't think that's right. Now, Ms. Grayson, I understand that this school board is a conservative body, and I don't expect you all as a whole to come out in support of this legislation. But at the same time, there are alternatives that exist, and there are pieces of legislation that would ban the Charleston loophole, that would raise the age for assault weapon permits. And I truly believe that all of these pieces of legislation, that these bills, absolutely pertain to student safety. And I think that taking action on them is the best way to ensure that me and my peers feel safe. I don't think that looking at this problem is solely a matter of in-school security, ignoring the pretense of guns like it's something that can't be changed. I just don't think that's the right approach, and I think it's necessary for this board and for the advocacy committee to look at this issue as a more nuanced one that encompasses other areas. This board can make a change. No person needs an assault weapon. No student should feel unsafe. I'm with the March for Our Lives, and we're here to demand change. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Leer. Next, we have Tessa Hubbard.
Hi, my name is Tessa Hubbard, and I have two students, one in high school, one in middle school. I am here with Tracy Fant and the Freedom Fighters to implore you guys to please give more thought into metal detectors into our schools to ensure that they are safe. The letter that you guys handed out attached with the agenda, it just kind of goes into what happens when these things happen. So what we're trying to offer is a solution to prevent it from happening. And a couple of things that keep getting brought up in regards to the metal detectors, number one is price and time. To me, that's two things that we can sit down as a whole of parents with you guys and come up with a solution. I pay my taxes. I'm all for raising it. I get into my son's school weekly. Basketball season just ended. Every week, he's forgetting something. Teenage brain. I enter in through the back. don't go through the front. You know how I get in? The students let me in. And it's not the same students. Sometimes it's students I don't even know that I have not seen before. I get in on a regular basis through the back door and not even go through the front door. It happens more frequently than it should. I believe that we should possibly have metal detectors in the front and in the back. You know, strip the kids down to the bare necessities. They don't need belts. Make them wear clothes that fit. They need books, pencils, and paper. Half the stuff's done on the computer there. That would cut down the time of going through the metal detectors. If kids continue to break the rules, write them up. That's, you know, making a new policy to ensure that they are safe. My daughter said something that really resonated with me a few minutes ago. If we can show up early to get on the bus to go to Washington, why can't we show up early to go through the metal detectors? I don't think that there is a price too big to ensure the safety of our children. A lot of the shootings that have happened are happening in schools that don't have metal detectors. We don't hear about it as often up north and places where metal detectors are in place. I think it will deter children from bringing these weapons into the schools. They're already getting them in there. You know, accidental, you know, things getting even through the front door where you have to get buzzed in. I've been buzzed in before, and a delivery guy bringing food pops around the corner and comes right on with me. Nothing, it's not foolproof. Metal detectors maybe won't be foolproof, but it will be a deterrent. I feel very strongly about it, and I really, really wish you guys would really sit down. If we need to do bake sales, whatever we need to do to make this happen, let's make it happen. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, Lizette Traynor.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to let me speak here tonight on behalf of DACA students. My name is Lizette Traynor, and I am the ESOL Program Director at Greenville Tech College. At Greenville Tech, we currently have 70 DACA students. Can you guess how many of those students are in my ESOL classes? Zero. And that is because Greenville County Schools has done such an outstanding job in educating these kids. They are completely and perfectly fluent in English. They are graduating at the top of their class. They are smart, they are outgoing, they are resilient, and that's something to be proud of. So much so that they are now attending colleges and coming to Greenville Tech. The only problem here is, let me ask you, of those 70, how many do you think are full-time students? Well, only 2. And the reason for that is because the tuition is prohibitive. They cannot afford it. Many of these kids are also from very low-income families, and they're helping to support their families. But we throw the term resilience and persistence around in education. These kids are the poster kids for resilience and persistence. My God, they are taking 1 and 2 classes per semester, and they are not giving up. They have huge hurdles to overcome, not just the tuition. Some of these kids are enrolled in programs that they know they can never work at because they cannot get certification or licensing for these careers, and yet they persist. And yet they keep coming back. They work just as hard, if not harder, than the other kids, than their peers in their classroom, because it means so much more to them. They have huge dreams. We have put a lot of time, effort, and money into educating these kids. We've done a great job. It's time for them to pay us back. Go to work, be the next generation of doctors, professors, social workers, come back to your community, work for your community. This is all they are asking for. That is all they are asking for, to give back to their communities. Let's do that. Let's let them pay us back. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Next is Dina Estrada.
Hello, my name is Dina Estrada. I moved to South Carolina at a very young age. I moved to South Carolina at the age of 7, and I've been living in the States ever since then. My parents, they have a thing with that. They move around every 4 years because my dad likes to keep it fresh. And whenever we moved to South Carolina, we moved here, and one of the phrases that my uncle told my dad was, "It's a great place to raise the children." And in my family, there's 4 kids. There's 2 girls, 2 boys. I'm the oldest of 4 kids, and I want to say that Lisa gave a really good description of what my life has been like ever since I moved to South Carolina. I began elementary school here, continued on to middle school, stayed until high school, and then went on to Furman University. I'm currently a senior on a full ride, and I'm also a DACA recipient. I wrote a little something. We're not asking permission to work or to let us study because others just like myself have proven that we can work 3 jobs, pay twice the tuition, take full advantage of every opportunity, and achieve our dreams. It's possible and it's been accomplished, and we continue to train and educate our next generation to do even more. We're asking for your support that will strengthen our community, our prospective future, and academic fields. I thank you for your time, opinion, and will to improve our Greenville community. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Ilsa Isidro.
Good evening, everyone. Well, thank you for taking the time to listen to us. I would just like to put a face to the issue because it's easy to get lost in politics, right? My name is Ilsa Isidro, and I am 22 years of age. I'm a senior at the University of South Carolina Upstate, where I am pursuing my Bachelor's of Science in Nursing degree. I am a DACA recipient. I arrived to Greer at the age of 4. I attended preschool, grade school, middle, and high school, all in Greenville County. I was your children's classmate, a friend. I grew roots in the small hometown of Greer that I proudly call my own. I graduated Greer High in the top 15% with a 4.1 GPA, a member of the Beta Club and other 15 extracurricular activities, was supposed to get the Pell Grant and the Life Grant, but was not able to do so. Nevertheless, I am set to graduate this December and want nothing more than to serve the Lord and my community that has given me so much as a nurse. However, South Carolina does not currently allow me to practice as a registered nurse due to my DACA status. And honestly, I don't understand the logic behind that. There are over 8,000 jobs that still need to be filled in the upstate. Hospitals are having to do incentive pay and sign-on bonuses to nurses, money that could be going to a better cause. I don't want to take my nursing skills to a different state. That is why I'm asking you to pass a resolution in support of the Dreamers, so that we can serve the community that has given us so much. I don't want to leave. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Jerry Carter.
Thank you. I'm here too, concerned about the safety of our school children. I have a daughter and a daughter-in-law who teach in Greenville County schools, 5 grandkids who attend, 3 more soon to begin. After watching what happened in Florida, I was very upset and dismayed, obviously, as I'm sure you were. We've got to do more than what's been done. If you look at all the levels that failed in Florida to identify this guy as a potential shooter, it was horrible. You know, so many levels of protection and government that just didn't work. And then in watching the news, I saw where some states have already put guns in schools for teachers to access if there's trouble. And it's a very controlled measure. Seconds count in a situation like this. And if you can't have a resource officer who's going to do the job, which happened in Florida, teachers can have access to guns quicker and perhaps stop it even earlier. So I would like to just ask the board to think about this, and perhaps whatever routines you have to go through or studies. If you haven't undertaken it, let's do it to find out whether or not this can be done in Greenville County. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Diana Hoyles Lopez.
Hello, my name is Diana Hoyles Lopez, and I'm a senior and DACA recipient who studies at Carolina High School. First and foremost, I want to thank everybody here who is present to support Dreamer students. We appreciate that a lot. I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about one of my biggest dreams that I'm currently working on right now, and one of those is to attend a four-year university and study to become a registered nurse. But unfortunately here in South Carolina I am not able to do that, which is very heartbreaking to me because I grew up here all 17 years of my life. I'm currently 18, and it's heartbreaking to me because my community has given so much to me, and I want to contribute back to my community that I love so much. And yeah, okay. So, like I said before, you guys have given us a lot to contribute to my community, and I know that you guys have already invested a lot in our DACA students, and I just don't see how, I don't understand why this has to be something that has to be debated about, obviously, but, you know, it would be really outstanding for us if we could give back to our community. You guys have already invested a lot in, like, economical, like, for public schools that we attend to, and we could really help out in filling in employment gaps here in Greenville County. And especially right now, I'm in a lot of medical classes right now, and I have learned a lot about the physician shortage here in South Carolina, and not even South Carolina, it goes all around in the United States. So it would really be important for this to pass, because more than anything, we want to give back to our community and be the new employers for tomorrow. And more than anything, I want to stay here and maybe hopefully be the registered nurse that my community needs. So thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Asha Murray.
Hello. Hello. Oh. So thank you for allowing me to be here. My name is Asha Murray. I am a student at Hampton High School in the Fine Arts Center, and I am here because I would like the school board to commit to safety in our schools. So every morning when I go to school, my mom takes me to school because I cannot drive, sadly. And I tell her, I love you, I'll see you later, thank you, and then I go into school. And you know what? The truth is, I might not see her later that day. I go into school, I eat lunch with my classmates, we sit outside, someone could easily come in with a gun and shoot us all. I go to track practice and the same thing could happen, same thing at lunch. At any moment it could happen to me. And I think about that every day, my friends think about that every day, and the truth is we should not have to. It should not be easy enough for someone to get a gun in less than a day and decide to walk into my school and shoot everyone. It's not okay. And a lot of my friends are here speaking about the same issues. A lot of the parents here are speaking about the same issues because the truth is we want to feel safe. We do not want to just be another tally on the murdered victims list to be heard and be listened to about this issue. We should protect our children now. We should protect me and my friends today, now. And so if that means getting better PA systems or getting metal detectors in our schools, I don't care as long as I'm safe. It should not be as easy as it is for someone to just come in and decide to end my life. And another thing I would like to talk about is the walkouts that are planning to happen, March 14th in particular. So a lot of us are planning to exercise our constitutional right to protest gun violence in our schools and demand a commitment to our safety in our schools. But I just want to know, like, what the penalties are for walking out, for exercising this right, because I think it's important for students to show how much this means to us, and that adults should listen to us, because the truth is we should not have to beg you guys to commit to our safety, and I feel like that's what we're having to do. So does anyone know?
Yes, ma'am, but we are not allowed by our practice to respond to someone who is speaking, but I can assure you that you will hear back from someone very quickly.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. But yeah, my concern is my safety, my friend's safety, my sister's safety. I should not have to tell my mom I love her this morning and then not come home later today in the day because of a gun. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Our next speaker is John Kenzel.
Toby.
I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Toby.
Good evening. Yes, that was Toby Kenzel. First, I want to applaud the leadership of the Advocacy Committee for considering the resolution to open industry and professional certification to residents registered under DACA. Thank you. I am here to speak in support of this resolution. Your own initiative, Graduation Plus, has goals to increase the numbers of students in Greenville County graduating with career courses or certification. It is unjust to encourage students to take these career courses and then them not have the ability to use those courses for certification. Further, they will not be motivated to take these courses, as you heard from the teacher from Berea, if there's no benefit for them in the long run. Voting in favor of this resolution supports your own goals for your own students. The only reason barriers like this law exist is to intentionally oppress groups. Opening licensure to DACA residents makes economic sense. It makes sense in terms of building a strong workforce. It makes compassionate sense, and it simply makes common sense. This could be the difference for students in providing for their families versus continuing the cycle of poverty. So simply receiving licensure could be the difference between living a life of success and fulfillment for them and their families or being in poverty. So I implore you tonight to vote in favor of this resolution. Otherwise, if you vote against it, you're voting in favor of oppressing your own students. We need your collective and courageous leadership to send a strong and positive message to our legislators in support of your students. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Hayley Wyatt.
Thank you all for being here. I'm Hayley Wyatt, and I'm here with the March for Our Lives as the Community Outreach Chair. Growing up in the downtown environment, I've always been told to be as creative and outspoken as I wanted to be. You all need to remember what you're teaching in your school system and respond accordingly. Our schools have become war zones. As students, we're scared. School shootings have happened in many different areas. Will we be next? We need time to grieve, and we need to honor the lives we've lost over the years. We need to work together to make sure we don't become another name on a news station at the hands of someone with a gun. I think it's important to the students of Greenville County that we plan to walk out. Because we plan to walk out. Students will still walk out regardless of the punishment implemented by administrators. I propose that the board aid us as students in keeping this walkout safe and support us in using our voices rather than countering our ideas with our own. Protect us and stand with us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our last speaker is Adela Mendoza.
Hello, everyone. Even though I've spoken to many of you individually, I just want to say that as an immigrant who chose to live in South Carolina, and I am now in my 10th year as a resident, it's not lost in me that this is the realization of the American dream, to be able to voice our opinions without fear. So thank you for that. I am here also to support our DACA students. You all have had an opportunity to meet many of our students, and I am sure that in your conversations with them and just listening to them today, you've realized that these are exceptional young people. South Carolina currently faces a workforce crisis. We know that for every 10 jobs in South Carolina, we only have 8 people. Even if we were able to put to work every single unemployed worker in the state, we will still have 20,000 job openings for which we just don't have enough people. If we want our state to be competitive, if we want more industry to come and help us bring prosperity to the future of all Carolinians, we must be able to include everyone in the making of that future. Providing the opportunity for DACA students to obtain professional licenses will allow them to pursue careers in more than 40 occupations in which we desperately need their skills, including manufacturing, nursing, or teaching. But beyond the economic benefits of passing this resolution, let's remember that we have a moral responsibility to these kids. We have a responsibility to ensure that every child in South Carolina and in our country has an opportunity to fulfill their potential and their dreams. It is in our hands to make this happen. As we come to the end of Black History Month, and we remember the people who in the past have spoken for those who don't have a voice, the words of Dr. King really come to mind. The time is always right to do the right thing. Let's not repeat the mistakes of the past. It's time to move South Carolina forward. Please pass this resolution. Help us open the future with all the opportunities that are available to these kids and allow them to make South Carolina an even more prosperous state. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll give just a moment for those who are exiting. Thank you all for being here. And now it is time for the Superintendent's Report, item 4.01.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. O'Connor. I think this is a timely subject tonight. I want to share with you, some of you I know have seen this on social media, but video we did to address some of the issues around school safety and security. And I know this body has scheduled at its March Committee of the Whole meeting more in-depth presentation that the administration is putting together now, an opportunity for discussion and to ask questions. We thought tonight would be a good time to look at what we are doing now, and the things that we have in place to ensure student safety, and then sort of as an introductory to that more detailed discussion at the March Committee of the Whole. Ms. Fitzer, can you start that video?
Yes, sir.
Greenville County Schools, our focus has to be and should be on creating college and career-ready graduates. But we can't focus on that work without ensuring that our students and our staff are safe on a daily basis. It is our greatest responsibility. We're extremely fortunate in Greenville County Schools that we have excellent working relationships with law enforcement agencies throughout our county.
We work together in such a way that it's almost a symbiotic relationship, and that the sheriff's office and the school district, there's really no definitive line between the two when it comes to the security and sanctity of our children, our schools, and the employees.
We have a very unique relationship with the Greenville County Sheriff's Office in that we have the only school enforcement unit in the state of South Carolina.
Sorry. John?
It just stopped on you. Is that playing from Facebook? That's it right there.
Well, my part, I don't know that I can recite from memory Chief Crow's part or Chief Miller's part. Hopefully we'll not have to watch the beginning of it a second time. While they're pulling that up, one of the things that we obviously want to reinforce And it's always difficult to do. There are few things that could be more horrendous than the kind of thing that we saw in Florida last week, and that always draws our attention back to our own safety and security. And that's obviously a very emotional issue, as it should be. Again, that was a horrendous event. Greenville County Schools, but I'll let them advance that through a little bit. But the reassuring thing, we should always be reassured of the facts. And the facts are that students in school, it is the safest place for a student to be statistically. There are, unfortunately, a little over 1,000 students every year of school age who lose their life in a homicide. A little over 1,000 in the entire United States. About 1% of those occur in a school. Now, the loss of any one life is a loss of too much life. But I think it's helpful for us to always keep in mind the facts and that statistically how safe students are, how safe our students are when they're in school. We'd like to reduce that to 0% and want to do everything we possibly can to do so within reason to ensure that we have the kind of environment that students feel safe, but also they can be engaged in learning in. So I think it's always important to us to center back on what are the facts around student safety in school. So I think we're ready to resume that now, Ms. Fitzer.
Yes.
Investigators and supervisors at the district level to ensure that we have appropriate law enforcement response and presence throughout the district. This is above and beyond the school resource officers that we have at every middle and high school, and above and beyond the zoned patrol officers that routinely, on a roving basis, patrol all of our campuses other than our middle and high schools.
The travelers rest officers are required, the on-duty officers are required to go by the school at least once a day at a random time, walk through, meet the kids, have lunch with the kids, visit random times, and several of us do that each day to kind of mix things up and to give a strong officer presence at the school.
In Greenville County Schools, we have a comprehensive safety and security plan. It was designed years ago with input from law enforcement and emergency preparedness personnel. It is reviewed and revised not only annually, but it's also reviewed and potentially revised anytime there's an incident of significance either in Greenville County Schools or in some other location in our nation. We take that opportunity to sit back, look at our plan, and see if there are things in that plan that need to be adjusted or need to be changed.
We test the plans with the school security folks, and we work together with them to try and shore up those plans, shore up the response to those plans, make adjustments as we need to try and again, fortify the schools to keep our kids safe and to make our parents feel comfortable and confident that their children are in good hands.
Hello, may I help you?
So we try to get into the schools, in different places of the schools, and we see if children will let us in, if there are breach points that are obvious or will, again, compromise the security of the school and the safety of our children. And we work with the security folks at each school and the team at Greenville County Schools to shore it up.
There's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes between law enforcement and the school district. I've always been impressed in the 13 years I've been the chief of Travelers Rest. I've always been impressed with the collaboration and the desire to learn and to reach out and to work together between the two agencies to make sure children are kept safe.
We sent out a memo to not only our uniformed patrolmen and women who are out on the streets to sit in the parking lots of the schools when they have downtime for paperwork, but we've also asked our investigators who are in the office a lot of times to, if they have an overabundance of paperwork, to go out into the field and do their paperwork in the parking lots of the schools. The school district has shared some of their property with us so we can house our school enforcement division so that we can maintain a good working relationship, on-site employees for the school district. We have some of our best investigators who work for the school district. Our supervisors that work at the school district are fantastic. Our school resource officers are invested in the schools. They truly care for the children.
I'm a parent. My children are in middle school and high school. I have the same concerns and feelings as any other parent, and I want you to know that we work our level best and the school system works its level best to keep all of our kids safe.
true and accurate information is always the best antidote to fear and the concerns that spread rapidly, and especially in social media. Stop, call your local police department, your sheriff's office, call the school district, ask for information, and I'm sure you will get better answers from those sources than you will from your friend on a social media platform.
If you have a concern, you need to call 911. If you don't know any other number, or you don't have the school resource officer's contact information, you can call the school system. They're going to take it seriously. They're going to report it to us or the appropriate jurisdiction. It could be Travelers Rest, could be Greer, it could be the county sheriff's office. But they're going to report it to us. We're going to investigate those. We're not going to let those slip through the cracks. We understand how serious those allegations and threats are.
The best advice I can give is, and to use a vernacular, if you see something, say something. That doesn't mean to pass along rumors. That means to let us know. Notify a school official, notify law enforcement, so the rumor, the threat, can be investigated to determine whether there is any credibility to it. But parents should be assured and remain assured that when they send their students to school every day, that they're sending them to an extremely safe place, to a place where there is constant adult supervision. That supervision carried out by adults that at their very core have care and concern for every child that walks through the door and want to ensure that they remain safe throughout the school day. That is our greatest responsibility. It is a commitment that we take very seriously, and we want to do all those things that we need to do to ensure that our students have the kind of atmosphere that they feel safe in, and one in which they can feel engaged in the learning that needs to take place. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that report and video, Dr. Oyster. The next item on the agenda, item 5.01, revision of policy FDC, the naming of new facilities. The recommended motion is to approve the revision of board policy FBC. Since it has come from committee, the item does not require a second. Just to let the audience know what the motion does, the revision to the policy provides the opportunity for a retiring employee to be recognized with the naming of an area of a school or building prior to the end of his or her retirement if that employee has submitted an accepted resignation and the naming occurs within 6 months of the effective date of resignation. Is there any discussion on this item? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. And the motion carries. The next item, 5.02, is the proposed resolution to allow DACA recipients to attain professional licensure. The recommended motion from the Advocacy Committee is to approve the resolution as presented. Since the item has come from committee, it does not require a second, but I would ask Ms. Grayson if she would like to speak to this item on behalf of the Advocacy Committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The first thing that I would like to do is make the board aware of the timeline. The Advocacy Committee has been researching this since last May, when students at Carolina High School invited all elected officials to their school to meet with them and their organization called the Student Dreamers Alliance. I believe only one member of the state legislature attended that meeting, but several of you were there. Following that, we had an Advocacy Committee meeting to which all board members were invited in November, again at Carolina High School, and we had a number of legislators in the Greenville delegation present at that meeting. In our January meeting, we discussed whether or not to take a position, if so, what position we should take in the current climate. I want to make clear that this is not a political statement on federal immigration policy. It is narrowly construed to address a group of students that many of you have varying degrees of familiarity with, who are legally residing in South Carolina and are faced with barriers that students in other states do not face. In 2008, South Carolina passed a law barring occupational licensing and industry certification to DACA students. We are not here to discuss the law as we wish it were. We are not here to debate immigration law. What the Advocacy Committee has discussed as a result of meeting with Representative Collins, who has introduced a bill in the House to allow not only licensing and certification, but in-state tuition and state scholarship eligibility to these students. We discussed that as a committee and decided to stick with the licensing and certification part, not blend those three issues together. We think this is important enough to attack one issue at a time. This is part of our responsibility as board members to ensure that these kids can complete their education. Because what we have now is they can go to our career and technical centers and they can be qualified for a trade or a profession in their chosen field. And then they can't get a piece of paper from the state that will allow them to do that job. The economic impact of that is that we're exporting talent across state lines after we as taxpayers have paid to educate these kids, our kids, some of whom have been here since they were a year old and know no other country but ours. And we're saying we're going to pay to educate them, but we're going to let them go work and contribute to the tax base of another country, another state, by saying they've got to go across state lines to get certified. It does not make economic sense. You all have heard the emotional appeal tonight. The Advocacy Committee distributed public testimony of these kids before the Joint Committee on Children. And I couldn't say it better than Dr. Ray. The school board is under an obligation to do the right thing. We have an obligation to educate all of our children. And I would be happy to entertain any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Grayson. Are there other members of the board who would like to speak to this topic? I will. Ms. Leventis-Wells?
I've received many calls for and against this resolution. We do have a crisis of shortage of workers in our state. DACA students want to be productive citizens. They want to give back. And it's a very difficult situation. It's a very political situation. It's one that you're either for or against. Greenville County School District is all about educating our students and leading you into the next step of your future when you graduate. I came on this board 12 years ago. I will actually attend a graduation where students were in kindergarten when I was elected, and I will see them graduate as a senior in high school and go on to wherever field, career, service of their choice. I am going to vote in favor of to move this to Columbia. But I am also going to ask all of those people who called me and wanted me to vote against this for them to call their legislators, because they are the ones that are going to have to make that final vote for our students. I want you all to have bright futures ahead of you. I also want you all to become legal citizens so that you won't have to endure such a situation as you're in today. And I want to encourage you that the district is always, we always have your best interests at heart, and we always care about the safety of our students. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Leventis Wells. Mr. Sailors?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. A point of clarification related to this legislation, just to follow up on what Mrs. Leventis Wells mentioned. Regardless of the action taken by this board tonight, this is still, am I correct in making sure everyone understands, this is still, Ms. Grayson, an issue that must be approved by the South Carolina General Assembly. Am I correct?
That is correct. We don't have the authority to grant certifications or licensing. We are simply urging the General Assembly to take a look at this 2008 law, which has had the unintended consequences of adversely affecting our economy by sending these kids away after they have lived here in South Carolina all their life and want to work here.
Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure that everyone in the room understood that even though we may or may not support this particular resolution, once it's approved or not, let's just say for discussion's sake that it is, that's as far as it goes as far as we're concerned. Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So one thing I'd like for the record to reflect is some statistical information that I would like to make sure that our community understands as we move forward. First of all, it costs us roughly $9,000 a year to educate a student. In loose terms, $9,000. If we've had a student educated from the first grade to the 12th grade, we have invested as taxpayers, to Mrs. Grayson's point, a little over $100,000. And in this case, with this select number of students, because there is a piece of legislation that prohibits them from getting their professional certification, the taxpayers of Greenville County and the state of South Carolina have invested $100,000 and will see absolutely zero return on that investment because those students cannot go into the workforce where I've heard 18,000 are needed. I think the chamber has said more than that, as much as 14,000. There are still thousands of openings for skilled jobs in this state that make very good money, yet you have a group of students that want a job that can contribute taxes to the economy and to pay back the community that helped them get to where they are. And they have to go to North Carolina, Tennessee, Alabama, Florida to get that job because South Carolina will not work with them. This resolution simply asks that from an economic and taxpayer standpoint is the right thing to do, but for the students it's the right thing to do. So I would certainly hope that once this discussion is finished tonight, that our collective comments and those of the students that so eloquently spoke tonight will be shared with members of the legislature because, quite frankly, ladies and gentlemen, the clock is not our friend when it comes to getting this accomplished in Columbia. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Ms. Morrison-Fair?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I would just like to speak on, I appreciate the leadership of Mrs. Grayson. And I'd like to speak on one of my favorite quotes from Martin Luther King. The measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands in times of challenge and controversy. I appreciate my colleagues taking up the mantle for this cause. It's only right to do this. It's just the right thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Morrison-Fair. Mr. Lewis?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you to the Advocacy Committee for taking up this issue, and in particular to Ms. Grayson, who has kept us on the forefront of our group's agenda, even as we tackled issues like buses and other things in the state. You know, I had the privilege of serving on the Children's Committee that Representative Collins serves on, and there were several things that committee did, and one of them was we traveled around the state and had folks just take an opportunity to talk to us about any issue they wanted to, and the number of students who had stories like the ones that we've heard tonight. In fact, many of the students who had stories here tonight also went and spoke at the Greenville event, and I was just really struck by the number of different experiences of how prohibiting students from testing for licenses is affecting children and families across the state. There was one speaker who spoke tonight, Mr. Campbell, who's here, and the thing that really struck me about what he said then, although I won't say it nearly as well as he did, was just this idea that we expect teachers to equip our students for college and career readiness. And they have to look these students in the eye and tell them to keep coming to school and to keep doing your best and to keep studying and to do the best you can, knowing that the day they walk across that stage, they won't be able to take the test to demonstrate the skills that they've been equipping them for 12 or 13 years. And I just think as a district, what a huge loss that is, that we would create an environment where we are falsely encouraging students to do their best, knowing that the finish line is moving on them. And so I'm really excited that this group was able to reach a compromise on this resolution and to create something that passed unanimously out of the advocacy committee. I think speaks a lot, and so it's a real privilege of mine, I think, to be able to have this conversation tonight. But I do want to repeat what one of my colleagues said, and that is that, you know, we will be able to take up a resolution here, but there are a lot of House members who need to hear these stories, and there are many really good members of the House who are completely unaware of the impact that prohibiting students from taking licenses is having on our high school and college students. And so I would encourage everyone who's here to feel comfort that they were heard tonight, regardless of the outcome of the vote, but that they also know that, you know, there's another large group of people who need to hear this. And so I hope that this is just a step along that process. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Ms. Rolleder?
Thank you so much for doing this, Ms. Grayson. Your leadership in that committee has been outstanding in everything you've undertaken, and I personally appreciate it. I can't speak for every member of the board, but I can speak for Dana Rolleder. Thank you very much. I also would like to echo what Mr. Saylors has said about the need to continue spreading this in Columbia, that we'll do all we can here, but the buck doesn't really stop here. It stops here as far as our resolution goes, but that's as far as it goes, and that's all we have the power to do. I'm going to support this resolution. 100% I'm going to support it. I'm going to ask for a roll call vote when we vote. I would like to also echo what Mr. Lewis has said, and also Mrs. Levinas Wells. She has tied the two issues together about safety and our DACA students. And DACA or not DACA, they all need to be safe. You won't find any more dedicated group of people here in this district who want safety for our students than this board. Every 4 years, we interview for our job again with our constituents. We spend money so that people will vote for us. And there's very, very little compensation. I wouldn't do it for the compensation. I don't want the compensation increased because I don't want people running for the money. I want them running because they love children and because they want the right things done. They support DACA students. They support students in every school. They support students from every community. It doesn't matter who voted for you. What matters is that their students are safe and that they get a chance to get the education they deserve. You'll see my opinion tonight with my vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rolleder. Ms. Wells?
I'm not able to, had been able to get to many of the advocacy meetings and was not able to attend any of those meetings, so I appreciate that students and families were willing to come and share their story, because it lends a perspective that it's hard to get out of a committee report, even though we had the conversation. So thank you for coming. I think beyond what's right for you, the piece of this that I think is important that we haven't really said yet is the impact on what businesses need. We talk all the time about how we want to partner with businesses, and to Mr. Lewis's point, we're going to make kids college and career ready. So when you talk about that, it makes sense. We are hearing all the time about manufacturers saying, you need more programs in your schools because we can't get enough workers. You need affordable housing crisis. We hear from county council all the time talking to us about we need more kids in the construction trade. We need more contractors. We talk about our teacher shortage looming. Every time we turn around, we're getting hit up with, we don't have enough qualified workers. In the chamber report, because I saw that was in the agenda and I looked up their report, they say there are as many as 7,000 and counting ready, able workers, a lot who have probably come out of our schools with the ability to do this work that cannot do the work because they can't get the certification to do it. So, it makes sense for a lot of people because of their heart, but I'm going to make the case that this is a business solution. This is something we need to ensure that we have a workforce in South Carolina that will support the growth that we have, that will support our economy, and will continue to build a strong future for all of our residents in the state. So I appreciate the leadership. Sorry I'm kind of late to the party and digging into some of it, but I'll be voting for this as well tonight. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Ms. Bush?
I'm going to share that I received a lot of emails. I would literally say in the hundreds from people, most of them giving me their phone number where I could contact them. I received an overwhelming amount of phone calls today and wanting to speak to and I'm a small business person, and so I don't have a staff like Trey Gowdy or Lindsey Graham that can, because the majority of people wanted to speak to my spokesperson or to speak to one of my aides. So I can say that this goes down in history as my first time that people have ever elevated me to that level, that I have aides and spokespeople and wanting to know how I'm going to vote on this issue. And having gone to that first DACA meeting at Carolina High School, and each time that you've come before the board and sharing those things, it was a completely different perspective from what I received from my community today. And I know a lot of you probably have received some of them too. Mm-hmm. And it has extended anywhere from apparently there was some discussion on talk radio, and then that was kind of like where you play the game and someone says, I think it was this, and then someone else adds to it, and all of a sudden it was like this tsunami that was rolling in of fear. And by the time most of those emails got to me and most of those phone calls got to me, you would not believe the concerns that people had, that I said, vote no on this bill. They were telling me, vote no on this bill. And I said, that's not a decision that the local, as some of my colleagues had said tonight. I said, there is a resolution before the board, which is simply a way of saying, move this forward. Well, we just want to know, do you support illegal immigrants teaching our children to be Muslims? It was so far out of what this resolution began. So, and I can say that there was this great fear, and it was, I can say there were neighbors of mine, there were business colleagues, I had two neighbors that stopped me out almost at daybreak this morning, walking my dog, that almost got in a fight over the issue because one was saying one thing and one was saying, no, I heard it was this. And so how are you going to vote?
And I said, you know, this is way, you know, the same thing with the age. This is way above my pay level. It concerns me that we send our students in this direction of taking these classes and going right to getting the certification, and then we can't. If there were something I could do here tonight to change that, I would. It's so far ahead, but it's so much above. And, you know, when I looked today and everybody was saying, well, how are you going to vote on this? How are you going to vote? And I said, what you think I'm voting on is not it's a resolution. Well, if it passes, then this is going to happen. So to many people, I spent most of my day trying to explain what a resolution was. I mean, to grandmothers that were literally in tears because whatever they heard was nothing about what we're doing here tonight. But, and so then I said, well, you know, this is one of those political situations where if I vote yes or if I vote no, you are in that political arena to where you are faced with a resolution that, you know, I'm sure there's going to be people that tomorrow think that because, and I'm glad that some of my colleagues said, something that passes tonight does not change. It is a resolution. It does not legally allow anyone to be able to get that nursing license, to get that. And so with the difficulty that I have come upon is that the only thing I said that I came to the conclusion was the only way to not be political in this situation was to abstain from the vote. And so I personally will share, I have already shared with my House member, my Senate member, my personal feelings, but to sort through all of those people that call me with this fear that we were doing something that absolutely today I heard the President and the Supreme Court are not even able to sort out. And that's way above my pay grade. So I am not stopping anything from happening. And so in order to be able, and I encourage, I applaud our advocacy committee for taking this on, for bringing this forward. I think we need to have more dialogue about this because people are so uninformed. And then all of a sudden there was this talk show that just spread this, it was just rampant, absolute fear within the community of what the Greenville County School Board was going to be doing here tonight. So I abstained tonight on the premise that we need to have more meetings, and I said that the first time I went to Carolina High School and heard these students. And thankfully, the next meeting, there were more legislators there. We need to have, so that there is not this fear, so that when this comes on, we have so many people standing here saying support this, that they're lined out the door and down the steps, and there's not this talk radio fear of I'm going to add to this, and this is what's happening when they have absolutely no idea of what a resolution means, and so I'm going to pass on to my colleagues that have all spoke so eloquently tonight. But in the recognition of that, what I feel is terrible, the information that has been out there and been shared about these students and been shared about the actions that need to be taken. And, you know, I had people saying, well, where did you get this data from that these... And I said, it's a resolution. It's not anything that's going to, we're just saying, look at this, have dialogue, and support this because we have this investment in these students. So I am going, for that reason and the reason of calming that fear within the community, I'm going to abstain from the vote tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bush. Mr. Meek?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I really don't have anything else to add. I don't know how I would after everybody's already spoke, but I am going to get my 2 minutes anyway. I just, you know, Ms. Bush and I live in the community over there where there's a heck of a lot of children who need our support, and I'm going to support it. I have supported it from the very beginning, and I always will. You know, I only have to get 51% of votes next election, so I don't have to get everyone, so I'm going to support the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Meek. Ms. Grayson?
I just wanted to say I've agreed with everything that's been stated here, including your comments, Ms. Bush. This is just a start. It is not an end, and we do need to have more meetings. We do need to raise awareness, and we do need to correct misinformation. And if we accomplish nothing else tonight, we have taken a step in that direction, which is our responsibility as educators in this community. So I appreciate everybody's attention. I appreciate everybody who came to speak to the board. I will point out that there were 10 speakers in favor of this resolution, and all those angry people that called me after this afternoon that I invited to come here and address the board did not show up.
Ms. Goodwin-Caldwell?
Thank you, Ms. Christabel O'Connor. I am first and foremost an educator thrown into this political arena, and my heart is for the kids, always for our students. So I support you, students, and I will be supporting this resolution. But I need for you to get everybody you can to contact these legislators, because they are the ones that make the decisions. We can tell them that we support it, we support you, because we want you to have every opportunity that you can to be productive citizens in the state of South Carolina and not go anywhere else. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Sailors?
Ms. Mills, when's crossover? So essentially, this legislation in the State House can be addressed between now and May the 10th? Okay, so everybody in the room needs to understand that between now and May the 10th is when something needs to happen in the House to get it over to the Senate, or it dies a quick death. Am I correct? Okay, thank you.
If everyone is finished, I would like to make a comment as well. And that is that I suspect that those who heard a lot of the misinformation on the radio this morning, if they could hear the facts as we have heard them and studied them over these months, and more importantly, if they could hear from these intelligent, outstanding, fantastic students and their advocates and their teachers, like Mr. Campbell, they would feel as we do. And from the very first meeting at Carolina High, I heard stories that I promise I will never forget. And I admire you so much, and thank you all for being here to help teach us what you need as we try to teach you and provide what you need. Anyone else? Okay.
Oh, go ahead.
I just want to correct myself. May 10th is the end of the session. Crossover date is
April the 10th? Thank you for cutting 4 weeks out of the process. No, thank you for correcting that, really. Thank you.
Ms. Wells?
I guess just to kind of clarify a point, you know, we talk all the time about legislation and whether it's an unfunded mandate or what the fiscal impact is for the school district. For me, correct me if I'm wrong, again, I'm late to the party, because of this resolution focusing primarily on the fact that we're providing a K-12 education and we want the kids, after they get that education, to be able to get their certification, we aren't advocating for anything that's going to have any sort of negative fiscal impact, no additional cost, no additional funds required. It is a net positive because you would have 7,000 people who would pay for a license and then be doing a job that was in that license in that field, right? So when you think about what we're trying to do, I think to Ms. Bush's point, there's a separation here that, in my view, we're in our lane. We're not talking about higher ed and what that is. We're in our lane to say this certification is important for a whole multitude of reasons, and it's the right thing from a business standpoint for the state. So am I correct on that?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, thank you.
And that these students are legal residents.
Yes.
Okay. If there are no other comments or questions, all those in favor
Madam
of
Chair, I call for
Ms. Rollletter ask for a roll call,
Roll call.
please.
Mrs. Bush?
I abstain.
Mrs. Goodman-Callowell?
Yes.
Mrs. Grayson?
Yes.
Mrs. Leventis Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Meek?
Yes.
Mrs. Morrison Fair?
Yes.
Mrs. Rollletter?
Yes.
Mr. Sailors?
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Sutton?
Abstain.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
And Dr. O'Connor?
Yes.
10 yes, 2 abstain.
And the motion carries. I got so excited I put everything away, excuse me. Still have work to do. Okay, our next item is 5.03, the audit of student activity funds. The recommended motion from Internal Auditing Services is to accept the audit of student activity funds for fiscal year ended June 30th, 2016. Do I have a motion? Yes.
I move to accept the audit of student activity funds for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2016.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Mr. Barber, do you have any comments you'd like to add?
Yeah, I have a presentation.
Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to rush you. Let's be glad to hear from you now.
Okay, these audits were performed to determine if schools comply with the Student Activity Fund and County Handbook and the policies established by the Board of Trustees. Schools were selected based on implementation, principal change, recommendations from the administration, and the help of the workload of our external auditors. For fiscal years ending June 30th, 2014 and 2016, we audited 42 district locations. Let's highlight some of the schools' individual audit information. Of the 42 locations audited, 8 schools' audits resulted in only 3 to 10 audit errors. These schools are Armstrong Elementary had 9 errors, Cherrydale Elementary 3, East North Street Academy 4, Montague Elementary 4, Mountain View Elementary 10, Stone Academy 4, Taylor's Elementary 4, and Blue Ridge High 7. 19 schools were audited during both fiscal years ended June 30th, 2014 and 2016. 6 of the 19 schools made significant improvements in 2016 school year. These schools are as follows. Fountain Inn Elementary went from 27 to 16. Stone Academy went from 29 errors to 4. Taylor's Elementary went from 12 to 4. Hughes Academy went from 31 errors to 15. Greenville Senior High Academy went from 104 to 34. 7 schools accounted for approximately 51% of the total errors, equaling 760. And those schools were Robert E. Cashin Elementary, 75 errors, Woodland Elementary, 90, Blue Ridge Middle, 78, Greenville Middle Academy, 148, Lakeview Middle, 69, Korea High, 73, Hillcrest High, 70. We also had a couple observations in the executive summary. And observation number 1 concerns a previous weakness identified in internal controls when schools receive funds in the mail or funds are delivered to the school. We are recommending an improvement to help strengthen this process by requiring all funds to be receipted into a receipt book or logged by another individual prior to delivering funds to the person performing the bookkeeping function for all locations with student activity funds. This process establishes a permanent record of the transaction independent of the person performing the bookkeeping function. Our second observation concerns issuing checks to organization for which the payment is intended. We discovered that there was checks being made payable to schools rather than booster clubs. However, the checks were actually being deposited into the booster club's checking account. We are recommending that all checks be payable to the organization for which the payment was intended. In our booklet that we sent, we had a number of graphs we presented We also provided 2 charts disclosing the summary of observations and items appearing on each audit report. We also provide a statement of cash position, or on pages 123 and 124. We're presenting, again, this audit for your acceptance. This concludes my presentation, Madam Chairman. I'll be happy to address any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Barber. Does any board member have a question? Mr. Lewis?
Thanks for this information, Mr. Barber. I just have a couple of questions about some of the findings. So one of them is, in one of the elementary schools, I think it was maybe Fountain Inn, there was checks were deposited and returned for insufficient funds. Can you explain how would a check be returned for insufficient funds?
The person who wrote the check to the school, they didn't have enough funds in their checking account to cover that particular check, so it would bounce.
Right.
Actually bounce.
I get. So, is that a common occurrence that the school districts?
No, it's not our check.
That the student activity fund accounts would not have.
No, it's not our. It's not our check. It's a check we're receiving.
The checks bounce to us.
Yes.
Okay.
No, not our check.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks.
I thought that might be you were.
I feel a lot more at ease with the answer to that question.
That you were confused as to what the source of the check was. It was not our check.
The second question I have is about the booster clubs, and so I think in one of your observations, it was that the booster clubs there would be an event, there would be a check written to the school, and the check would be deposited into the booster club, even though the name on the check is actually the school and not the booster club. Is that correct? So I know that we had talked, Dr. Royster, maybe 6 months ago or a year ago about the district kind of providing some more guidance to booster clubs about operational procedures. Do we have an update on that? I think there was even a handbook that was being prepared.
Mr. Knotts can address that. I believe, if I recall that specific finding, although it's been a while since I looked at this, I believe those were events sponsored by a booster club. For example, Rick, a wrestling invitational. And the check came made out to the school, even though it was sponsored by the booster club, so they deposited it to the booster club, which they should not have done, but that's the explanation for it. Mr. Knotts, you want to provide an update on the procedures?
Yes, sir. The committee was formed and had developed recommendations for booster clubs and PTAs to follow. We also had meetings with individuals from booster clubs and PTAs to give them input to their concerns. We've also drafted with Mr. Brown a revised board policy. I don't know if you guys will bring it to the board. We talked in April timeframe that once that happens, we will have training sessions with booster club presidents and PTAs to go over the procedures. And that will hinge on the board approving the provide board policy.
The board policy then will serve as the link for us to link those guidelines as administrative rules to the policy.
I think we had talked, though, in addition to kind of fiscal policies, about actually providing, I think Mr. Nance was going to provide guidance to booster clubs about just general operational procedures. Are these financial procedures a part of those new guidelines that are going out to booster clubs? Have we finalized
I don't know that he's here tonight. Darryl, you here tonight?
He's back there asleep.
Yes. If I heard him correct, yes.
Okay, so it's all part of the same guidelines that we're providing to the booster clubs. Okay, thank you.
Ms. Grayson, did you have your hand up a minute ago?
Oh, I just had a quick question. I thought we already required somebody other than the bookkeeper to receipt incoming mails in a receipt book. Didn't we do that? Didn't we implement that last year?
At the high schools, we do require the full-time bookkeepers to be not be the first one to receive the funds. That is not a requirement for the secretaries at middle schools and elementary schools. What we're going to try to do is implement these procedures.
Okay.
To
in the middle school, uniformly, middle school, elementary, and high?
The challenge is at the high school, there is a separate secretary and a separate bookkeeper. At the middle and elementary schools, there is in essence one person who serves both those functions, and there's only one person in the office more than 10 months. But I believe that Mr. Knotts has worked out some arrangement to try to provide a procedure in lieu of the one we have at the high school level. Is that correct, Mr. Knotts?
Yes, sir. We'll also have to work with individual elementary schools and middle schools to work out some type of procedure to follow these. The concern is the staffing level in the front office.
Excuse me, Mr. Knotts, could you, if we could hold the side conversations down a little bit, and if you could please turn your mic on or get a little
I think
closer.
it's on. There was a problem.
Okay.
I believe, without repeating each thing he said, I think some of that was a restatement of what I said. The challenge is at the elementary and middle schools, we don't have that number of office personnel. And if I recall correctly, the number of transactions we're talking about, Jeff, are very few in number. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Barber's nodding that that is correct.
May give you a couple of examples. The number of checks we're talking about for elementary schools coming in, as far as coming in through the mail or somebody bringing them into the front office. At Woodland Elementary School, one of our largest elementary schools, there were 6 checks for the entire year. However, at Lake Forest, they received about 62 checks for the entire year, and most of those checks were from the PTA from Lake Forest. So we got a range of number of checks coming in that we want to make sure the secretaries at the elementary schools are not the first one to receive those checks. At the middle school, Lakeview Middle received 11 checks during 2000 FY16, and Riverside received about 54 checks during FY16. Again, most of those are PTA donation checks. So those are the checks, the volume we're talking about coming in during the course of the year to make sure, where possible, that the secretary at these schools are not the first one to receive these funds.
I mean, we also don't want to create a situation because of the limited number of personnel, particularly if they get a check in the summer, where a check sits there and doesn't get deposited because there's not a second person. So there's some challenges to that. Did that answer your question, Ms. Grayson?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Okay, Ms. Wells, you're next.
So I can absolutely see how, band boosters sponsor an event, they have 36 schools show up, and they bring checks that are already made out to high school X instead of high school X band boosters. So, I mean, what is the procedure to take care of that? If you're at an event, you don't want to just tell people to take their check back, and you don't want to tell them to take their 85 band students back to
Well, what we'd say to them, we'd let their band participate and say, you take your check back and send us one to the booster club or deposit it to the school.
Okay, and that was going to be my question. So could they just, in that case, could they deposit it in the school account, but then can the school reimburse the band boosters for that, right?
But they don't have to write a check to the booster club. They can still use it for the intended purpose. So the two avenues that we would recommend to a school is either say to that band, you need to go back and send us a check. When you get back, send us a check made out to the booster club, or deposit the check into the school account. Ultimately, all that money gets used for the good of the band at the school anyway, right, and figure it out, because we're not talking about, over time, we're not talking about that much money or that many checks.
Right. Okay. And I guess one other question, looking at some of the activity fund balances that are left at the end of the year, do we have a recommended limit on how much a school should build up in their coffers? Or there's some significant money that seems to be carried and growing in some of the schools. So
we don't. we don't want to force schools to spend money on things, obviously, that they may not be in their best interest to buy just because they got some money to buy those things with. A lot of times schools are building up a deposit to a point to do something big. We may not necessarily know what that is. We can always ask them that. And a lot of times they're building up revenue at the end of the year that they're going to spend in the fall of the year. So there may be a reason at the end of the year they've got that revenue. But we don't, other than we want to hold them strictly to appropriate accounting guidelines, and we don't want them to misuse money, obviously. We try to be very, we try not to micromanage what principals decide about their local activity accounts that those schools and those communities raise, and generally raise for specific purposes.
Okay, and I guess I agree that they probably have a great idea of what they need in their community, but when you see several $100,000 carried over a course of several years, and you know that a lot of that's built on parking fees and student fees, and they're raising money by charging fees to students in a lot of cases. So I think any time that we see those large balances, then that's an appropriate question for the person to whom that principal reports to ask the principal. What are you saving $300,000 for? Yeah, it'd be great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing is to make clear that most of that money is in the district's investment pool, so it's not necessarily sitting in their checking account. So that's the total balance, but there's some policies that we've established that they have the minimum number of amount of money in their checking account. Most of that's in an investment pool savings.
Okay, and I'll just say the same thing. But if we're going to charge our students fees, we don't need to do that to invest it somewhere. We need to spend it on services for the kids. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wells. Mr. Lewis?
So just to follow up on that, so as I look at some of these schools, Taylor's Elementary, for example, has a fund balance of $369,000, and their total expenses last year were less than that. So they've got basically an entire year's worth of spending in reserve in addition to the funds that have come and gone. Riverside High School has $460,000. Is it possible that we could look at this list, and in any of these schools that have a fund balance more than $250,000, could we get a summary of what it is they are saving those dollars for? Because my concern is not just the fees, but that we are continuing to ask parents to fundraise for these same schools, and many of the schools that have fund balances that are significantly high have very active PTAs that are actively raising money today. And if you go back 7 or 8 years, I bet you would find that those parents raised money that is currently sitting in a reserve, while we're still asking parents today to continue to raise those dollars. So I would really appreciate an explanation for some of those larger numbers at a future meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Mr. Meek?
I have a great idea. Why don't we all just put it in one big pot and divide it up equally? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Meek. Yeah, would you like to make a motion?
No, ma'am.
Okay, any other comments? Mr. Suddeth?
Clarify. On observation number 1, only high school bookkeepers are not permitted to directly receive or receipt funds. At other locations, bookkeepers are permitted. Who permits them to do that?
At the middle schools and elementary schools, they do not have full-time bookkeepers.
I understand that.
They have secretaries to receive these funds. So in the high schools, they have a full-time bookkeeper. That's the only responsibility they have, is to manage the books of the high school. The middle and elementary schools, we will have to work some receipters out where possible, these secretaries are no longer the first to receive and receipt these checks or cash.
Then why would we say, what do we say when we say no bookkeeper should directly receive or receive any funds?
What we're talking about there is if a secretary at an elementary or middle school is opening the mail, there's a chance when they open an envelope, there may be a check in that envelope. What we don't want to have is that secretary receiving that check. What we're having to look at is having that secretary get up, go to another individual in the front office who has a receipt book and receipt that check into the system. There may be some schools where the attendance clerk or somebody else is opening the mail, and that person opens that envelope, and that person will receive that check, which is good. The problem we will have in the summertime at the elementary and middle school is we have two people who are there, the secretary and the principal. And there will be times when the principal is not there, and the secretary may receive a check in the mail, or somebody may bring up a check to the front office. In those cases, that secretary will have to receive that check and put it to the system. What we're trying to do is put controls in place with a secretary who has access to the checks and potentially cash to limit the number of receipts that secretary may receive in checks and cash, and potentially do something inappropriate with that checks and those cash, and that cash. We're trying to enhance our internal controls to protect the money coming to the school where possible.
Will you tell them that you're going to work with elementary and middle schools to implement the recommendation?
Yes, sir.
So how are you going to do that?
I can't go in there and tell carte blanche to every school, this is how you must do it. Because how every school, the front office is designed and how the front office is staffed. We're going to make some recommendations to these schools and work with the schools and see if they have any questions to try to implement this. I can't sit here right now to you and say we will 100% reach this goal. We'll try to do the best we can to strengthen the internal controls we have about how the checks and cash are handled in the elementary and middle schools.
When you're going to work with the school administration to determine alternate procedures, what are some of the alternate procedures?
To be honest with you, at this time, I don't know. I'm going to have to see what works best for those schools. And my staff have to work with the schools to see what's best to help the schools achieve this goal. I just don't know what those procedures may be.
So that's something we'll probably never obtain 100% on?
Yes, sir.
Okay. One second question. We had a scope limitations. 2 outside organizations did not send requested information regarding checks written to the schools. We're unable to verify amounts from the source of these funds. So we've got a booster club and a vending that said they're not going to give us the requested information.
Yes, sir. We asked numerous times and they never provided it for us, so we just had it listed as a scope limitation that we weren't able to validate information from that vendor that we wanted to.
What does a scope limitation mean?
Means, that was part of our audit program, and the scope of our audit program was one of the tests we were doing to try to improve and enhance some of the testing that we did. We asked for vendors to send us checks that they issued to the school, like picture commission checks, any type of vending check, or any kind of yearbook commission check, or anything that from the photographer, any checks that we know that the schools receive, we asked those vendors to send us that information so that we can independently validate that that actually went into the checking account. Because what we've had in the past, we've had where we had bookkeepers were getting checks, but the checks were not getting into our checking account. So that's what we were doing. We were independently asking for that information so that we can validate that those checks actually did go into the bank.
But
So they did not provide us with what we asked. So we just had to list it as a limitation of the scope of our audit.
so they can choose to cooperate or choose not to cooperate. There's nothing we can do to correct that.
No, sir. We asked them and they just never sent us information.
So where we have a, I guess you might say a weakness would be with the booster clubs. Would you call that a weakness?
Lack of cooperation, maybe. I don't know if it's a weakness.
Okay. Tomato, tomato. Okay. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. If there are no other questions or comments, all those in favor of the item, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. And the motion carries. The next item is information on the status of our internal auditing projects. Mr. Barber, this item is for information only.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. We were just presenting our normal monthly status report on the projects that we're currently working on. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Are there any questions by board members? Okay. Mr. Lewis?
Mr. Barber, can we get an update on the payroll audit from 2015 that seems to be at 5% complete?
Yes, sir. We have received the information on the sample of items that we need to look at. We are two auditors that I have. They're going to work on that. I've been working on extended day and kind of got involved in the extended day. We're trying to get an extended day audit to a point where we could leave that and go into the payroll. So we do have the information that we need now. We just need to get in there and start. The extended day, we're running into some difficulties, so encountered more time on that project than we thought.
I didn't hear.
We're going to that next. We're going to be moving to it soon.
So what are you now auditing in the payroll separation of employees audit? Like what's the scope of that audit?
The risk that we thought was we discussed it with the administration was looking at employees that are terminated and to make sure that those checks are actually have been stopped. Because the way our system works, if you're a salaried employee not punching a time card, that paycheck will continue to be deposited in your account until you tell it to turn it on. So, we have a lot of different locations all over the county. So we have to rely upon the principals or the directors of each one of those organizations. If an employee terminates service with the school district, that they have to get that information to Human Resources to stop that payment. So we thought that was an area that we wanted to test to make sure that those employees that are actually terminated, excuse me, that their paychecks were promptly terminated. We didn't pay them a couple additional pay periods, things that we should not.
And just for clarification, when you say employees are terminated, you mean employees who resigned or were terminated? They're all in that sort of group?
Employment either in any way.
Okay, so any employee whose employment ended?
Ended.
Okay. So how?
I mean terminated, I mean they have transferred, elected to resign, no longer working for Green County.
Okay, so since this is a 2015 audit that we're still working on in 2018, is the intention to audit practices from 2015 all the way through 2018 to just look at 2015? Like, what's the scope of that?
More current.
Okay.
That's just the appeared, that's when it appeared on the calendar, on the audit plan, but we'll be looking at a more current period of time.
And how is the scope of this audit different than when it just said payroll last year when it was on your audit? Have we changed?
I mean, you know, payroll is what, 80 to 85% of our total expenditures. So that's something maybe we should probably be doing every year, something in payroll. So
I agree.
We put it on, when I develop an audit plan, I said, well, we want to look at this area. So then we have to go through our planning stages and discuss it with the administration and say, okay, what's our greatest risk? Where do we need to go here? So, you know, next time we just generally put a general area on that, and then we have to fine tune it to see, okay, where do we really need to, what part of the payroll? I mean, there's so many facets of the payroll that we could just audit payroll and never leave.
So for the time being, we are strictly auditing separation of employees.
Yes, sir.
But you have identified other areas that potentially we could have other payroll audits for in the future.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Mr. Sailors?
Rick, looking at the 2015 calendar as well, using the document that you've published, Mr. Lewis asked about one area that has a lot of blanks. Let me ask about the only other one, which is the fuel tank monitoring system. What's the status on that one?
We received management's responses. We had an exit conference on that project on February 9th. We received management's responses, and we have a number of questions with them, so they are obtaining the information so that we can clear our comments on their response.
Okay, so how long is that going to take?
Mr. Sailors, I anticipate...
Oh, you're over there. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Microphones are not working over there. Anticipate us answering the additional questions and the additional documents internal auditing has requested, giving all that to them by the end of March at the latest, if not before, so then they can look at additional information we have provided to them.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you, Mr. Barber. Thank you for the update. Our next item on the agenda is 7.02, the board committees updates, and I would start with Ms. Grayson.
You've heard enough of me tonight. We are taking up the safety issue next, and we appreciate comments on school safety, and I reiterate the comments of my colleagues that this is an important issue we need to determine how to address.
Thank you, Ms. Grayson. Mr. Lewis.
The board policy BBC continues to move forward, and we will have a third revision of that policy for the group to look at sometime next month.
Okay, thank you very much. And anybody want to ask anything about that? Okay, thank you. The next item on the agenda, board chairs update, 7.02. I want to say thank you to board members who made presentations at the South Carolina School Boards Association. Derek did a fantastic job presenting the work that the Advocacy Committee and Board did on transportation with Chuck's help. And then Chuck informed and entertained the crowd with an advocacy presentation where he pretended to be a very rough character from the legislature and took everybody on. It was very entertaining for everyone. Lisa and I also made a presentation on policy development and evaluation and the importance of leading by policy, which was very well received and well attended, and we enjoyed that very much, bringing the work, and we had most of the committee who'd worked on that with us in the audience and were able to make some comments about their takeaways from the work as well, and a lot of interest from board members all over the state on the work that we all presented, and lots of great participation by all board members who were there. The other thing we did this month, our workshop after the February Cal was very successful in kind of marrying the policy statements with our priorities, our mission statement, belief, and vision with those from the community group, and ending up with priorities relating to student success, K-8 reading, improving classroom environment by lowering class size and reducing teacher burden, also improving teacher and principal quality, having a focus on that, improving and expanding school choice and innovative programs, and of course supports for the whole child, the social, emotional aspects, and remaining connected and supported for the students and all their needs, and of course innovative programs that the community groups had mentioned too, that Terry Brinkman did an excellent job of bringing together with our priorities for then a full-day workshop on February 20th. And please raise your hand in the audience if you participated in the work groups that the board members got to come around and visit. Raise your hand, please, if you did. Yeah. Thank you, everybody, for that work. And to Terry for making the opportunity, and for the superintendent and all the staff, to listen carefully to the board input on each and every one of the 5 goals as we went through that entire day. The board was patient, worked hard, and did a great job along with the staff. Finally, I want to let you know to please hold time on your calendars before the March and May board meetings for the special topics conversations that you all requested, and Nancy has agreed to help me get that information out to you in much more specific detail, and I thank the superintendent for working with me on that. Okay, thank you everyone for that, and the last item on the agenda is the monthly financial report, 8.01, and Dr. Royster, would you please lead us through that?
Yes, I think Mr. Knotts has a couple of pieces of specific information tracking revenue, and he also has, I think it's a little bit, it's a different graph, but a new graph on fund balance, if perhaps we can bring that up. While they're doing that, I believe what he's going to share with you about revenue is our property tax revenue is tracking a little bit above what we anticipated, with the exception of car tax. Jim?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Dr. Roy. So concerning property tax, in your December financial statements, it actually shows we're about 3% behind in property tax revenue compared to the same time last year. However, we are finished with January, and January's property taxes percent-wise are in line with January of last year. However, there is a concern. During the past several years when we built the budget, we were telling the board and informing the board that we were experiencing significant increases in the property taxes we received from vehicles, that it was increasing anywhere from 15, 18% by year. But that has stopped. It actually has reversed. As of through January of this year, our property tax revenue that we were receiving from vehicles, cars, vans, what have you, is actually about $1 million less than the same time last year. Because I think we reached a plateau. If you remember during the recessions, a lot of people didn't buy cars. There was a built-up demand for vehicles, work vehicles, personal vehicles, which we experienced. The concern there may be long run is how that may impact our mill value for the general fund for next year. And that's what I'm concerned about as far as the impact for this year and for next year as we're building the FY19 general fund budget. That being said, I am excited. I don't get excited too much, but I am excited to show some updates.
Yeah, you look real excited. It's jumping all around.
I don't think I've never seen Jeff excited.
This is exciting. Okay, control yourselves. Mrs. Stack is the one that develops these line graphs for us every month. This one is one we have seen for a couple of years now. And what we have added, if this red dot shows, is the percent for the past years for December. And when we present this again for January, we'll show the same percents for January of the past years. Just a little bit more information to give the board additional perspective when we look at items. How do you go to the next one?
Were you excited too? He's too excited to do his work. Doing the happy dance. Got 5 minutes. What color is 2017? I can't tell, Jeff.
I was told it was green, so I'm not sure.
Jeff cannot just give you a guide to colors.
And this is actually a brand new graph, which we are excited about.
Feel the enthusiasm.
This graph provides information how we actually are dipping into the board's required budget balance, budget reserve. This graph does not include the board required amount, does not include any designation of funds the board has set aside. It truly includes just the general fund's unassigned fund balance. So when you look at it, this dot right here, where did it go? This dot right here is about $65 million. And you'll, excuse me? Right there. I'm sorry. You'll see this line right here is 0. And you will see for most years, except for this current year, we went below 0 in our cash. We actually had to dip into the board's 8.33% that we have to set aside. So when we talk to the board, but you will see that's in November. And you will see it immediately grows back out in December. Because around December the 2nd or December the 1st, we receive approximately $21 million from the state as part of their Tier 2 allocation payments. So this shows you the benefit of having a fund balance and also the benefit of having that board required amount of 8.33%. That stops us from having to do a TAN every year. And that's our new graph. Thank you.
It's very exciting. Thank you so much.
I'm happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Does the board have any questions or comments for Mr. Knotts? Hearing none. Mr. Meek.
Madam Chairman, I make a motion, we adjourn and go home.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. And we are adjourned. Thank you.